welcome to Volusia Magazine. I'm Holly Smith, sitting in for Pam Tenyus. On our program today, I'll show you how Daytona Beach Community College is preparing for a return to the 1960s. Beads, flowers, freedom, and happiness will be hitting the campus of Daytona Beach Community College at the end of the month. That's when the musical Hair opens for a 4-day run. I'll give you a look at the show coming up in just a few minutes. John and Julie will tell us about a report to the Volusia County Council that has had some residents worried about their basic transportation needs.
Do you ride Votran, the county's public bus service? If you do, stay tuned for From the Council Floor to hear what changes may be coming.
And Dave Byron will be interviewing Dr. Howard Rodenberg, Volusia County's Emergency Medical Services Director, and Debbie King, the Trauma Program Coordinator for Halifax Medical Center in Daytona Beach. We'll learn about the demand for urgent medical care during recent Bike Week events. We'll get to those stories in just a few minutes. 2.5 miles down, 250 miles of electrical conduit to go. Progress on the county's new $45 million courthouse on Alabama Avenue in DeLand is coming along at a rapid clip. More than 30,000 cubic yards of earth have been excavated in the basement area of the structure, and more than 120 tons of reinforcing steel has been put into place. Now, when complete, the structure will use nearly 10 times that amount.
The past 30 days, we made significant progress. We are almost done with the foundation work. The footers that you see behind me, they will be done probably next week, end of next week. Over the next 60 days, we will be coming out of the ground with the foundations, from the foundations and the columns, and we've today placed concrete around 5 of the columns. In the next 60 days, the first floor will begin to take shape, and then the building will begin to rise out of the ground.
The new courthouse will provide space for circuit and county courts, court administration, the clerk of courts, the state attorney, the public defender, elements of the sheriff's office, and a variety of court support and building support operations. The 4-story U-shaped structure will include 8 jury rooms, 6 formal hearing rooms, a public parking garage, and office space for an estimated 400 workers.
We've had some very good weather. We've probably only had 1 rain day in the last 30 days. Hasn't impacted our schedule. We're working out here Saturday mornings to get ahead of the schedule because we know it's going to come June, July, and August. We're going to have rainy days, so we're trying to get out of the building foundation work by the 1st of June. And then one of our major milestones is to start to have the first floor slab done by the 1st of June.
Now, public tours are scheduled at 2 and 2:30 every second Friday afternoon of the month. They are conducted by a member of the construction contractor's staff. The construction process and current progress, including short-term and future work, is explained. Now, since construction activity is ongoing, hard hats are provided to ensure the safety of visitors. Participants must wear long pants and closed-toed shoes. Well, the day is just around the corner when someone will be able to hop on their bike, ride to a Votran bus stop, get on the bus with their bike, and head to a destination of their choice. Votran will launch an intermodal Bikes on Buses program on June 1st. Votran General Manager Ken Fisher.
One of the things Votran has been working on is trying to increase everybody's mobility, and by offering different options for mobility. And bike racks have been tried throughout the nation in different systems, so we thought it was an appropriate next step for Votran to take to offer another mobility option to the residents of Volusia County.
16 new Gillig buses equipped with bike racks on the front of the bus are arriving this month. A $14,000 grant from the Florida Department of Transportation will allow Votran to retrofit the rest of its fleet with bike racks. Riders will place the bike on the rack themselves, and each bus will accommodate 2 bikes. An instructional flyer will provide safety information for cyclists who plan to use the intermodal transportation. Now, other Florida public transportation companies with similar programs report heavy usage. Visitors to this year's Daytona Beach Garden Show last week had a unique opportunity to tour several of the county's eco sites. Now, eco sites involve environmental, cultural, heritage, or outdoor experiences. The eco tours may well have been a first for garden shows in the country and help to show off the diverse activities Volusia has to offer. The tours took guests on a round-trip excursion from the Ocean Center to eco sites around the county. Trip options included the Halifax Historical Museum and Sugar Mill Botanical Gardens, the Museum of Arts and Sciences, Blue Springs State Park, Lyonia Preserve, Historic DeLand and the Henry A. DeLand House, Lighthouse Point Park and Ponce de Leon Inlet Lighthouse Museum, and the Mary McLeod Bethune Home and Ormond Memorial Art Gardens in Ormond Beach. In addition to the tours, the Echo display at the show provided brochures and discount coupons for visitors who were not able to take part in the tour. Also, children explored the Echo Ranger Station in the Children's Discovery area of the show adjacent to the feature gardens. Young participants potted plants with the Ormond Beach Kiwanis Club. They viewed a special penny tree and marveled at a butterfly habitat presented by students of Mainland High School in Daytona Beach.
Daytona Beach International Airport, where parking is easy, with discount coupons from local travel agents.
The 60s are coming to life at Daytona Beach Community College this month. The musical Hair is about to open, and with it comes a flashback to a time when headbands, halter tops, and hip huggers first made a statement on the fashion scene. But the hippies of the show are looking to make a different kind of statement, a social one. Gary Cadwallader, the show's director, explains.
Hair is the original rock music from the 1960s. I mean, it completely threw the world for a loop when it came out, because it was the generation of that period breaking through all of the social conventions. You know, there was nudity on stage. There was, which we do not have nudity on stage, but it was all about taking the society's mores and breaking them on stage. And so it was an enormous controversial hit of the 60s.
Looking for my Donna, looking for my Donna.
All right, any problems? Okay, get used to platforming, huh?
Auditions were open to the community. Members of the cast include students from DBCC, Bethune-Cookman College, Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, as well as one community member. Now, many of the students are in theater programs, but they represent other majors too.
Well, they love it, because I still think that people like to break through and to express themselves individuality, you know, and I think it's just as important today. So these kids are really loving this whole being able to express themselves without any inhibitions on stage. I think it's the same as it was 30-something years ago. But they're all young people, and which really captures the hippie generation, because they were all 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, people who had just gotten out of high school or who had just dropped out of high school. And so these kids are all the right age.
Just make sure that you interact with each other. You know, it's kind of like, it's good fun. Okay?
You're used to working with professionals in New York. You came here, you're working with Seaside Music Theater for several years. What's it like to turn around and direct, rather than act, direct amateurs?
Well, it's a whole different process that I have to get used to. You know, with working with professionals, first of all, the rehearsal process is a lot shorter. So you're used to professionals bringing in all of their creative process to the rehearsal. Working with amateurs or students is you have to not expect them to be bringing those things in to rehearsal, because I don't think they have a full awareness of the process. So you have to give them a lot, and sometimes it's kind of draining, you know. But it's a whole different challenge than I'm used to. But I'm up to it, and I certainly enjoy raising the level for them, you know, and making it into a professional production. I try to give them a professional experience, and that's what they're getting with me. And so I raise the level, and they're rising up to it really, really well.
Cadwallader says his cast will gain professionally as well as personally by this experience.
You know, the way that the technical aspects, the set, the lights, the costumes, everything for this is very professional. So I think they're going to walk away with that. As actors in the musical Hair itself, I think what they're going to really walk away with is a sense of liberation. You know, whenever you're an actor in this show, you release a lot of inhibitions as a person. So as people, I think they're going to be a lot freer and expressive.
The show is choreographed by Kevin Vega, the director of dance at the college. Cadwallader also got some helpful advice from someone who knows the show better than anyone.
I just directed a show in St. Augustine, and my music director for that show was a friend of James Aredo, who wrote the book and lyrics to Hair, and also played Claude, was the lead in the original production, and still directs it to this day. So she put me in contact with him. I've spoken to him on the phone and asked him some questions, and we talked, and he could not be more helpful and supportive.
This show is just one part of a series focusing on the art, literature, and political life in America during the 60s. A host of lectures, concerts, and an exhibit at the Southeast Museum of Photography are scheduled during April. Cadwallader says those who see the show will walk away with a perspective of what life was like during the era.
Hair is twofold. It's a good time, and it also makes you think. They'll go away with the great music, but also with a sense of looking back at what the 60s were like, you know, the explosion of civil rights and Vietnam.
Hair opens Wednesday the 19th and runs through April 1st. Shows are at 7:30 in the Theater Center at the college, and tickets are just $3. For Volusia Magazine, I'm Holly Smith.
VOTRAN is Volusia County's public transportation service. A proposal to make this service more cost-effective was presented to the County Council at their March 9th meeting. The plan identified 18 potential changes to bus routes throughout the county. The County Council heard numerous concerns and some very emotional testimonies from residents being impacted by these changes. To hear all the issues and how your County Council is dealing with this critical public service, stay tuned for From the Council Floor.
Today we're here to obtain input from the public on the proposed service changes, and Mr. Chairman, I would suggest we just open it up to the public hearing, and we have Cutter and VOTRAN staff members available after those comments to answer any of the questions from the council members.
We're fighting very hard to keep our community up there and the quality of life that we have, and changes in this bus route will extremely affect that quality in a number of ways. One, we have our children who use this bus to go to school or to after-school programs so that they could get home, or to be involved in the Ormond Beach community programs, of which there are many.
The residents who live in that area have no means of transportation at this point and have never had public transportation. A lot of them do not have their own vehicles. It's 20 miles to the nearest grocery store, and they would really use the service.
Many of us feel that it would be a major disservice to our area to remove the service north of Sandra Drive. There's something over 3 miles that there is proposed to be no bus service at all. And about half of this 3 mile has no sidewalk and narrow roads on both A1A and John Anderson Drive. And truly there are people riding bikes and walking these routes daily up there that are endangering their lives and others. There's the only way that some people can get out of this area is by bus.
The part of government is to provide services for those folks who can't help themselves, and we pay taxes to subsidize many of the services that don't even come close to paying for themselves. And what we're asking is that you take just a close look at our needs up there, and we don't mind reducing the number of buses, but at least provide some level of service to these folks who need it the most.
Because of dropping my son off to school and catching the buses now, I wait almost 40 minutes for buses. But if you take away the Route 8 bus going north, the one that goes up Halifax, over Granada, up into Ormond Mall, then you got to take away our transportation, right?
I'd just like to say that we don't have a route in Northwest Volusia. None. So that's the reason you don't see as many people here. We have the same needs, we pay the same taxes, but we have no service. We're not asking for a lot of service, we're just asking for some service.
It was never our intent when we got into this to eliminate service to some area that desperately needs it, and to handicapped, disabled folks and so on. What people have to remember is that some of this was to eliminate duplicate services that were provided by buses, not to eliminate the route altogether.
And Volusia County is so spread out. To run a good, efficient bus service is certainly a challenge. I mean, when we go to Northwest Volusia and service that area, there's a lot of what I call dead space. As transit system's efficient if it turns over the seats. When it doesn't turn over the seats and the area is sprawled, then trying to balance the efficiency with the resources is very difficult, and that's the challenge we're going through right now.
I guess you'll be bringing back this report. You go back and reevaluate all this, all the routes, according to your public participation today and what we have said, and bring it back for a final hearing.
For a final recommendation.
Final recommendation.
The next County Council meeting is scheduled for March 23rd at the Thomas C. Kelly Administration Building in downtown DeLand. The meeting starts at 8:30 with public participation. Everyone is invited, so come spend a day in DeLand and watch your county government at work.
Dave Byron is standing by with an interview about the emergency medical services that were in such demand during our recent Bike Week festivities in Volusia County. With many serious accidents involving motorcyclists, EMS personnel were hard at work treating and transporting injured people. To find out more about this vital service, let's join Volusia County's Community Information Director, Dave Byron.
Thanks, Holly, and good evening, everyone. The recently concluded Bike Week in Volusia County was the bloodiest ever. 12 bikers were killed in highway accidents, and almost 3 dozen required intensive medical care. With a record Bike Week crowd estimated as high as 600,000, EMS workers in the field and hospital trauma teams work long, hard hours to keep up with the demand for medical care. Today on Volusia Magazine, we're going to look at Bike Week from an EMS medical treatment point of view. Our guests are Dr. Howard Rodenberg, Volusia County's EMS Medical Director, and Debbie King, the Trauma Program Coordinator for Halifax Medical Center in Daytona Beach. Dr. Rodenberg, let's get started with you. You're Volusia County's EMS Medical Director, a position that maybe not a lot of people are familiar with. Tell us what your role is.
Well, in general, my role is to dictate the standards of practice for the medical care provided by the pre-hospital services in Volusia County. Those pre-hospital services include fire services as well as EVAC, the county ambulance service. What people don't realize is they also include the beach services and the EMS services the lifeguards provide, as well as that of the Sheriff's Department in Volusia County Area 1.
With the activity that we've had in the last couple of weeks on Bike Week, with a number of traffic accidents, unfortunately several fatalities, obviously the EMS community was very, very busy in the last couple of weeks. Howard, as you look at the EMS system, as you look at the level of care that was provided in the last couple of weeks, sitting back now, your observations.
I think the system actually performed very well. This was, as Debbie will be able to tell you, certainly the worst Bike Week in recent history. And the system actually performed very admirably. They dealt with multi-casualty incidents in a very efficacious and efficient manner. There was a good handoff of care between agencies, good coordination of care, and there was appropriate staffing as well. Some agencies had chosen to overstaff or to add extra staff to certain areas of town and certain ways of providing care. And so I think the system actually performed as it should, relatively without incident. And of course, when the system is quiet, that's when we like it best, because it means it's doing its job.
Debbie, going to you from the trauma point of view at Halifax Medical Center, I know a number of these critically injured motorcyclists ended up in your medical facility. First of all, tell us the statistics at Halifax Medical Center. I guess it was the busiest Bike Week for you ever. And tell us what it was like out there.
Well, it was very busy. It was our busiest year ever. Bike Week, unfortunately, is our busiest trauma time for the year. And we had 35 critical trauma admissions this year.
Wow. And that's a record then, is it not?
That is a record.
Now, I know that obviously, you know, the medical center, like the rest of the community, has a good, you know, track record on this. They know and familiar with Bike Week and what to expect. So obviously, you have a lot of plans and so forth. Did you bring in extra staff, or what was it like for the medical center?
Well, we did bring in extra staff. For any event like this, we always bring in extra staff. We had, over time, we had extra physicians and nurses. The actual hospital itself had extra staff on board. But unfortunately, the hospital was busy before Bike Week started, and we were pretty much full to capacity. So Bike Week just added that many more patients.
As you look at the kind of care that is required for a motorcyclist who has been injured, I guess a lot of those injuries would be head injuries, maybe internal injuries, and I guess a lot of broken bones. So when they get to the medical facility, a lot of them are in pretty rough shape.
We do have a lot of orthopedic injuries or those bone injuries, fractures, and that lays people up for quite some time. So our hospital, we may finish Bike Week yesterday, have finished Bike Week, but those injuries go on and those admissions stay in our hospital for some time. Our orthopedic floor will have some Bike Week visitors for quite a while.
And I don't think there's any question that, you know, both of you would agree that the helmet safety is absolutely a critical factor in oftentimes in whether a person survives an accident like that. I know that's, Howard, what you were saying is that the helmets really make a difference.
Absolutely. I mean, 2/3, if not more, of these injuries are certainly preventable, and wearing motorcycle helmets is certainly one way that can be accomplished. When somebody doesn't wear a helmet, they not only injure themselves, but they also injure their family, they injure their friends, and they injure society as a whole by being taken out of the productive workforce and by, you know, engaging healthcare costs. So absolutely, on a personal, on a professional, on a societal basis, I think it's absolutely mandatory that bikers, if they're going to be safe bikers, as the majority of bikers wish to be, need to wear those DOT-approved helmets.
You know, obviously, when you have a roadside accident that the way that we typically had during Bike Week, you could have several agencies responding. I mean, you could have a local fire department, chances are that would be the first responding unit, and then of course you could have EVAC to show up for transport, you could have the FHP involved, a lot of agencies. And how does the coordination work between all those agencies?
There's a couple of levels of coordination. One is the control of the scene itself, and that usually involves safety and public protection, and it usually falls within the jurisdiction of whichever city, you know, governmental agency in which the incident occurs. So if it's on the highways of the interstate, FHP has control of the scene. If it's in the city of DeLand, for instance, the city of DeLand Fire would assume control of the scene. The medical control of the scene is established by the first paramedic on scene. And that first paramedic will then engage in what's called a triage process, or a sorting process of determining how severe the injuries are, how many injuries there are, and what care is initially required. And then as additional EMS and pre-hospital care resources arrive, they will be designated to the patients according to the severity of the patient's illness or injury.
So there's all, I mean, the protocol for all of this is all spelled out and all accepted and understood by all
we do have
agencies.
Yeah, we do have a uniform protocol throughout the county for dealing with multi-casualty incidents that does cover things like scene control, who's in charge of the medical care of the patient, the triage and sorting process, and the allocation of resources, including the allocation of where patients go to the hospital.
Well, Debbie, he brings up an interesting point. Obviously, the medical center, or all the hospitals, I guess, in the county have a say or have influence on how all of this plays out. What, back at the ranch, so to speak, back at the hospital, when, you know, you may have a transport coming in, what sort of advice or guidance or what role do you play in all of this?
Well, we get the call from EMS that there may be a trauma alert. There are certain state criteria and county criteria that we use to determine if we're going to mobilize the entire trauma team or not. So they will call us. They have these protocol and criteria already, and they will call us and say, we have a trauma alert. At that point, we mobilize our team. Only if they need added direction or any medical direction do we offer any further direction at that point. Otherwise, they'll follow their local protocols and bring the patient on in. And of course, with trauma, it's a time factor. We're looking at the golden hour. So the on-scene time is typically should be 10 minutes or less is what we shoot for. So they will get that patient, get them packaged, immobilized in a C-spine, and bring them on into the hospital.
I mean, I assume, Dr. Rodenberg, that the EMS people have a pretty good feel for this.
Yeah, they really do. It's a field that's built on some protocol criteria for what's a severe trauma. It's also built on experience as well. Many of these paramedics have years in the field, and sometimes they just get a sense from the scene of the accident, even if the patient looks okay, that this patient is at high risk for having a delayed injury or a serious injury that isn't apparent yet.
Right.
So paramedic experience in conjunction with the protocol really does a very, very good job of sorting out who has a severe injury and who doesn't.
The last couple of weeks during Bike Week, when we had so many traumas, unfortunately a record number of fatalities, has probably raised the question in the community about a much larger incident. I mean, what would happen, for example, if we had a jumbo jet crash, or if we had, you know, heavens knows, an accident with, you know, several dozen injuries and maybe several dozen fatalities. What sort of decisions are made, or what sort of protocol is in place for that type of disaster?
Well, I think it's important to note right at the outset that a disaster of that magnitude is not something that anybody in this world can really plan for.
Right, exactly.
The nature of the beast is that it happens unpredictably, that you never quite know what's involved, and that your resources are never quite where you want them to be.
And it doesn't happen where you want it to happen.
Exactly. And that's true in Volusia County, that's true any place else in the world. That being the case, we do have protocols in place for mass casualty incidents as far as who would coordinate the scene, how patients would be sorted, how patients would be distributed between hospitals. And depending on the magnitude, that may be performed by an on-site paramedic, it may be performed by an on-site EMS officer or a higher level paramedic from an agency, or it may in fact be performed by a physician or by myself, that process of sorting and evaluating patients. So the process is in policy, it's in protocol. We do have disaster drills. We practice this. The hospitals have disaster drills where they practice their end of a mass casualty incident. And we certainly hope it doesn't happen. But if it does, I think Volusia County is as prepared as anyone can be, given the unpredictable nature, to deal with it in an appropriate fashion.
Debbie King, the Trauma Program Coordinator for Halifax Medical Center, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
And Dr. Howard Rodenberg, Volusia County's EMS Medical Director. Dr. Rodenberg, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you.
And that brings to a close another issue of Volusia Magazine. If you have any questions regarding our program, please give us a call at one of the numbers you see on your screen. And don't forget to listen to Volusia Today, Volusia County Government's public information radio program. Volusia Today airs Tuesday mornings and Sunday mornings on the local radio stations you see listed here. For Volusia Magazine, I'm Holly Smith. Have a great evening.